was in the shower, rinsing the shampoo from my hair, when I suddenly felt a massive sound throughout my whole body. I felt a sound and didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't tell if my eyes were closed or if it was dark. I couldn't tell if I was standing or not. It seemed as if I felt everything and I felt nothing. Then my arm was yanked. It was my husband. He was pulling me out of something, and he pushed me up a mattress that was like a ramp on top of debris and pushed me out the back of the house. The back of my house doesn't have a door. In complete confusion, I look back at the house and I see flames, not flames out the window, flames out the door. I see a wall of massive flame. It was so bright and hot, I could feel it. It was an explosion, a natural gas explosion. My house had blown up, and I found out later that I blew into the next room and the bathtub blew on top of me. That's what that was he was pulling me out from. That was an unexpected event. I stand before you today as an expert in unexpected events. To further my credentials, I'll report my desire to have a baby. My husband and I were so happy to go to the hospital together for the ultrasound, and it's a good thing we went together because he needed me to help pick him up off the floor when I found out that I was pregnant with quadruplets. That was unexpected. Not bad, but unexpected. Now, in case you're not yet convinced, I'll offer one more. I was in the kitchen chopping onions, and my husband of over 20 years came to me and said, "Honey, I need to go fishing." And he left me and 4 kids to go fishing in the North Sea of Norway and didn't come back ever. Life has unexpected events. They say an unexpected event is like having the rug pulled out from under you. But doesn't that conjure up a cartoon of someone's legs flying up and then they land with Tweety birds and stars circling their head? That is not what it's like. It's confusion, it's disorder of your world, it's chaos. It feels what you thought was solid and with shape is just liquid and spilling all over the place. It's not the rug pulled out from under you. It's the universe spinning in a new direction. I call them earthquake events because they shake you to your core. And I knew that one day my kids would have an earthquake event of their own. Hopefully not a house that blows up or a high-risk pregnancy or a spouse with overnight wanderlust, but something. And so I went on an epic search, looking for a formula, a method, a way to deal with these things that happen in life. And I found it. And I want to share it with you because you may have something unexpected happen in your world. I introduce the OODA loop, OODA. It was created by a brilliant military strategist named John Boyd. He was a fighter pilot in the Korean War, turned instructor, and he noticed that slower, less limber planes were outperforming faster, more agile aircraft. And he figured out it was the decision-making training, not the technology, that gave the advantage. So he took this decision process and he deconstructed it, analyzed it, recreated it, and calls it the OODA loop, OODA. The military still uses this in training today. Now, the corporate world and the business world, they're always looking for ways to outperform their competition. They get their hands on the OODA loop, they tweak the same ideas, and they use it. How? 2003, Oreo cookie observes that their wildly expensive Super Bowl commercial couldn't air because of the power outage. They Orient with a range of responses. They could do nothing, they could complain, they could reschedule, they could address it on social media. Their decision makers were in place and connected to act. The last step. They acted by tweeting, "You can dunk in the dark." Oreo cookie. Huge social media success and changed a facet of advertising forever. So the military uses this for success, the business world uses this for success, and we can use it in our earthquake moment. How? The first step is observe. We have a tendency to respond emotionally when an earthquake event happens in our life, and the OODA loop says, step back and observe. There's a new landscape. It is new and changing. Look. So for illustration, let's create a scene. We're in a forest, and it's burning. Our first step, observe. Where's the family? How much time do we have? What are the escape routes? Observe a new landscape with fresh data. The next step is orient. Orientation here is the interpretation of what's been observed. It's the most important step and the most overlooked. You see, we all have mental machinery that's in place, that's been built by a lifetime of experience, and we use this to shape how we interact with our environment. The next step is to decide. When we orient, let's go back to our scene. We're in the forest and it's burning. We're going to climb to the top of a lookout tower, all the way to the top, where we see 4 windows, each pointing in a different direction. We look out the first window to the north. We see the fires approaching. We look out to the east. The landscape is engulfed with flames. To the south is a rocky terrain. To the west is water. Orientation is like looking out of the windows. When we respond emotionally and we see only one window, we see one set of options. But now we observe that there's more windows and more options, and now we can decide. We have a tendency also to look inward to what's worked in the past. And what do we do when what we try to make work doesn't work? Sometimes we just keep trying to make it work. Same strategy, more gusto. When your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But now we've observed a new landscape. We've oriented to different opportunities and potentials, and now we can decide. For me, I'm going to climb out of this lookout tower and I'm going to swim west to the breakwater that I can see, and the next step is act. Which seems obvious, doesn't it? Act. Have you heard the story about the 3 frogs that are sitting on a log? The guy in the middle thinks he'd like to jump into the water to cool off. So the question is, how many frogs are left sitting in the log? How many? 3, because the middle guy only thought about it. We have to take the action. I've got to get to the water and start swimming. That's my decision. When I hit a sandbar, I start the loop again with fresh, new data. And that's how the OODA loop works. But we're not in a forest and it's not burning. So let's try this on in real life. I hear the words, honey, I need to go fishing. Now, if I didn't have kids, would I still be in a pile of sorrow and tears? I don't know, because I do have kids. And I knew that they were watching me. If not in the moment, they'd be watching from retrospect in their future. This is how we handle crisis. Mom is showing me now. And I knew I had to start with observe. The landscape is new and it's different. And I have to open my eyes and look. What do I have? What do I need? How do I feel? How do I show these kids that home is stable? Now, I'm not saying I didn't feel, because I did. I used Kleenex for bed sheets and blankets, but I knew I needed to blow my nose, back up, and look at a new and changing landscape with a clear vision, a landscape that was wide and deep. The next step in the loop is act. I knew that I needed to take the human footsteps needed to stay in my house, feed my kids, and set myself up for the next chapter of life, not as a woman abandoned, but as a survivor. No matter how small the steps. And it is easy, is it easy to put one step in front of the other in a crisis? It's not. Smaller steps are easier. Do you see the loop? Our actions create the results, and the results is the new landscape, no matter how small changed. To observe, orient, decide, and act. It's a loop. It keeps going. It's dynamic. Okay, you say? I get it. Might be easy to say, hard to do. That might be true. But the point is, we have a range of options that are available to us when we start with observe. We don't have to use the first initial emotional reaction. We don't have to be limited by emotions for good results. Psychological clinicians are trained to take a person by the chin and lift them up when they're breaking down and in the fetal position. The fetal position indicates a total emotional overwhelm, an inability to move from feeling to thinking. So why do they lift the chin to the sky? To help a person move out of feeling and into thinking in order to observe, to orient, to decide, and act. Now, will this pause for you in your earthquake be a moment, a week, a day? It doesn't matter. The power is in the pause. This loop that we have, we use every day, whether we know it or not, from what to eat in the morning to what retirement investments to choose. It's the press pause to start at observe. Now for me, when the house blew up, I was trained literally to see that I was alive, not dead, not burned, not maimed. That took a moment. When I was pregnant with quadruplets, I oriented with a strategic plan in place. That took months. And when he left for the North Sea, I decided to live without hate. I chose the orientation. I looked out the window that showed me that I could be a survivor. I knew that hate would eat up my energy, use my time, and weigh me down. I chose the orientation that would give me a future. I had to get to that future, so the next step is decide. For me, I went old school. I got a 3-ring binder, and I wrote. I wrote names of contacts, food banks, charities, organizations that were designed to help. I had to build an immediate survival plan and a long-term survival plan. I wrote and I scratched out and I wrote some more. But I had an orientation and I had a vision. And that took years to go from survive to thrive. But it happened. Now, last year, my son, my college-age son, it was an accident. He was restoring a car in the garage, and the gas tank exploded. I know, it's a heck of a family tradition. But because of the smoke in the house, we all had to live in a hotel for a few months. But my kids and I, we know this OODA loop. We use this OODA loop. We get the OODA loop. We're not victims. We're survivors. What we had was another life story, and we knew it right away. We each have a loop, a decision loop. Let yours serve you. Thank you.